cruel queens in the history of mankind. Most nations around the world are patriarchal, and female rulers have almost always sparked debate, concern, and even fear. Nonetheless, several nations have had queens or empresses who ruled well and poorly. Hello and welcome to Wow! Amazing! Being a queen gave these women immense power, and as such, they could make decisions that directly impacted the lives of many people. Queens can be erratic, especially if they are opposed. They might even be equally destructive when fighting to safeguard their and/or people. Many queens have striven to safeguard their homes, children, or whatever they thought was theirs. Some just happened to go about it in an especially murderous manner. Do you want to know more? Let's have a look at the top 10 most cruel queens in history. Wait till you get a surprise. Number 10. Zinga. Zinga became ruler of Ndongo in 1624, a country besieged by other African kingdoms, as well as Portuguese slave traders. Ndongo was located east of Luanda and was primarily populated by the Mbondu people. According to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Nzinga allied with Portugal to ensure that her people were not captured as slaves, even being baptized to seal the alliance. As a result, Ndongo had an ally in its conflicts with other African countries. However, 2 years later, Portugal deceived Nzinga, and she and her people fled to Matamba, where they formed a new government. Nzinga's previous state of Ndongo was now governed by Portugal, and she made it a point to incite rebellion there. She attempted to ally with the Netherlands to reclaim Ndongo, but she was unsuccessful. As a result, Nzinga focused her efforts on making Matamba a better trading state. Matamba was as powerful a trading partner as Portugal by the time she died in 1663. Number 9. Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar. From 1828 to 1861, Ranavalona I ruled the Kingdom of Madagascar. Following the death of her young husband and second cousin, Radama I, Ranavalona pursued an isolationist and self-sufficient policy, cutting political and economic ties with European powers, repelling a French attack on the coastal town of Foul Point, and vigorously suppressing the Malagasy Christian movement. Ranavalona, when Andre Anjafai was deposed from the throne in the royal city of Amboamanga, was actually born as Ramavo, a commoner living with her parents. Many of the warring tribes were finally united under the leadership of King Andre Anampoina Mirena, bringing peace and prosperity to the kingdom of Mirena after years of internal warfare. This was during a time when most African empires had fallen to European guns and bombs, but Madagascar had been virtually unknown to foreign invaders for centuries. By the 18th century, European explorers had discovered this unspoiled and untamed land and were scrambling to claim the prime estate as their own. Madagascar was the ideal pit stop for the English on their long journey to India, while the French were eager to add Madagascar to their already rapidly growing African portfolio. Prince Radama succeeded his father as king in 1810. Ranavalona grew increasingly frustrated by her inability to restrain her husband's modernizing tendencies. He was eager to usher his country into the 19th century. King Radama began to allow more foreigners onto the island, particularly British missionaries who began efforts to convert the indigenous people to Christianity. They built schools and contributed to the development of a written language. Ranavalona watched in horror as the new religion took root, threatening Malagasy god worship. Number 8. Countess Elizabeth Bathory of Hungary. Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman and infamous serial slayer, was born in Transylvania in 1560. She used her power to protect herself from the consequences of her actions, and she spent years murdering servants and peasants. Count Nadasdy, her husband, went so far as to construct a torment chamber for his wife, Xaith Castle. She also liked to gorge herself on her prey. She would frequently bite and eat chunks of them while they were still alive, and she may have even forced someone to cook and eat some of their own body in one case. Her behavior eventually became so heinous that a trial was held. She was found guilty on all 80 counts, but was only convicted to solitary confinement within her castle. Number 7. Princess Olga of Kiev. Princess Olga of Kiev is shrouded in mystery, and many of the stories about her may be false. What we do know is that she was a Ukrainian princess and Russia's first female ruler. After her husband, Igor I, was assassinated, she became queen regent in 945 CE. She was crowned queen in his place because their son was too young to rule. Her first act was to seek vengeance for her husband's death. The men responsible were apprehended and executed with scalding water on her orders. But she didn't stop there. In her rage, she ordered the slaughter of hundreds of men's tribe members as retaliation for her husband. According to some accounts, Olga had the tribe leaders buried alive and devised a plan to set fire to their entire town. According to one story, she duped the tribe leaders into attending retreat, then locked them in a bathhouse and burned it down. Whatever happened, Olga converted to Orthodox Christianity soon after her revenge was complete. Number 6. Empress Catherine of Russia. Nobody could have anticipated that Catherine the Great, a fairly minor German princess, would one day rule all of Russia. She eventually married Tsar Paul III, an unpopular ruler in Russia. He'd gotten in trouble with the Orthodox Church, and his wife wrote in her memoirs that he was a feeble-minded drunkard. Catherine had a lover, Grigory Orlov, with whom she was able to court the country's military leadership and overthrow her husband. She was a skilled horseback rider who personally led 14,000 soldiers in the deposition of the Tsar. She then put on a male uniform and declared herself Empress of Russia. Number 5. Isabella of France. Isabella of France, also known as the She-Wolf of France, was Edward II of England's queen consort, mother of Edward III, and queen regent from 1327 to 1330. She was Philip IV of France's youngest surviving child and Joan I of Navarre's only surviving daughter. On January 25, 1308, she married Edward and was crowned queen consort on February 25, 1308. Even though she bore Edward 4 children, including his heir, the bisexual king spent more time with his male favorites, showering them with gifts and honors while neglecting governance. Edward faced constant baronial revolt, and Parliament succeeded in limiting his power from 1311 to 1318. Isabella traveled to France in 1325 to negotiate the terms with her brother, who had seized Edward's French possessions. There, she began an adulterous relationship with Roger Mortimer, who had escaped from the Tower of London in 1823 after being imprisoned for his role in the 1321 to 1322 revolt. Isabella plotted an invasion of England with Mortimer to depose Edward. They successfully invaded in 1326. Edward was deposed and later assassinated. Isabella and Mortimer ruled as co-regents on behalf of the future Edward III of England from 1327 to 1330. Roger's rule, on the other hand, was despotic and self-serving. The young prince was pushed to seize power, which he did in 1330. Mortimer was executed, and Isabella retired to work as a nurse. Isabella has caught the attention of many novelists, historians, and playwrights. Her adultery and alleged role in Edward's murder will invariably mar her legacy. She may have opposed her husband out of a desire to improve governance. However, her partner was nearly as corrupt as Edward. Her son, on the other hand, would do much to strengthen Parliament's authority, making it much more difficult for future kings to ignore the public good. Edward would claim the French throne through Isabella, launching the 100 Years' War to do so. On the one hand, many people died during this war, but Parliament was boosted as it became increasingly reluctant to prove funds for wars. Number 4. Isabella of Castile. Isabella of Castile, Queen of Castile and Leon from 1451 to 1504, was born in 1451 and died in 1504. She and her husband, Ferdinand II of Aragon, brought stability to the empires that served as the foundation for Spain's unification. Isabella and Ferdinand are remembered for completing the Reconquista, ordering the conversion or execution of their Muslim and Jewish subjects, and funding Christopher Columbus' 1492 voyage that resulted in the discovery of the New World. The Catholic Church bestowed the title Servant of God on Isabella in 1974. Number 3. Queen Mary I of England. Queen Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary, is one of history's most evil queens. Her attempt to convert England back to Roman Catholicism did not go well, and she burned 300 Protestants to death. It is said that England lost territory to the French as a result of her. She is also rightfully regarded as one of the cruelest queens in human history. Number 2. Julia Agrippina. Julia Agrippina, also widely recognized as Agrippina the Younger, was Nero's mother and influenced him during his early years as emperor, particularly as his regent at the time. She was exiled in 39 AD after taking part in a conspiracy against her brother, Caligula. Britannica reports that she was allowed to return 2 years later. Agrippina was suspected of poisoning her second husband, and she married her third husband, Claudius, the following year. She persuaded him to adopt her first marriage son Nero and make him his heir. When Claudius died 5 years later, Agrippina was suspected of poisoning him as well. She was appointed regent for her son Nero, but this did not last. Nero eventually executed Agrippina. It's not surprising that Emperor Nero turned out the way he did, given what he must have learned from his mother. Number 1. Empress Musician. Empress Musician is widely regarded as China's most evil empress. Wu, who was born on February 17, 624 AD to a high-ranking and wealthy noble family, was raised to be an incredibly intelligent and highly regarded young lady. Her father believed that women were more equal to men, so he empowered his daughter to read classical Chinese literature, play instruments, write in calligraphy, and even be well-versed in history and politics, all of which were exceptionally rare for women at the time. When the Emperor of China died, his youngest son, Li Ji, ascended to the throne as Emperor Jiazong. It was customary for consorts of a deceased emperor to be sent to monasteries to become Buddhist nuns if they did not bear children with him. Wu, on the other hand, had a special relationship with the now Emperor Jiazong, and he brought her back to the palace to be one of his concubines. Everyone knew Wu and Jiazong had been having an affair during his father's reign, which was obviously extremely disapproved of. Jiazong ran into Wu as he was on his way to offer incense at his father's tomb on the anniversary of his father's death. They both started crying when they saw each other. Wu quickly became the emperor's favorite, and in 652, she gave birth to her first son, Li Hong. In 654, Empress Wang and consort Zhao joined forces to eliminate Wu, but they were unsuccessful. Wu had a daughter soon after, but she died mysteriously soon after. The most widely accepted version of the daughter's death is that Wu suffocated her own infant and blamed Wang for the child's death, claiming that Wang was the last person to hold her and did so out of jealousy. As disturbing as that idea is, many historians believe the child died of crib death or suffocating on the blankets and other items in the crib. In any case, Empress Wang was blamed for it and was unable to clear her name, prompting Emperor Jiazong to begin looking for ways to depose her. As empress, Wu began to make moves behind the scenes, gathering allies and eliminating threats through death or exile. Empress Wu is thought to have been the power behind the throne for over 18 years. Jiazong began to suffer from strokes, prompting him to grant Wu nearly equal power to himself. Wu sat in on meetings with him and his chancellors, albeit behind a screen, and even presided over court without Jiazong present. Jiazong considered making Wu empress regent, but his advisors advised him not to. Despite the horrible crimes she committed to becoming the ruling empress, she was one of China's last rulers during the Golden Age. She was a very peaceful ruler who worked hard to achieve equality for women and peasants. Due to the lack of gender equality in Taoism, she moved the country away from Taoism and toward Buddhism, and she reduced taxes and gave more aid to peasants. As a result, the country's agriculture thrived, and the commoners adored Wu. With that said, you just explored some of the cruel queens in history. What do you think about them? Quickly subscribe to Wow! Amazing! And give this video a big thumbs up. Stay tuned for more interesting and spine-chilling videos.